Community Association car chat with David and Caitlin because Steve couldn't make it this morning. So glad to have you with us. Today we have a special guest, like Steve likes to say. It is Caitlin Maggiano, professional engineer from Klein and Hoffman. She is the office super manager, senior executive associate, master of trades at Klein and Hoffman. Maybe I overdid the title a little bit. Can you fix this for me, Caitlin?
Sure. Hi, David. Thanks for having me. So, yes, Caitlin Maggiano. I'm a senior associate and the office manager of the Klein and Hoffman Philadelphia office.
All right. So, what do you typically do? Tell us a little bit about Klein Hoffman. What kind of engineering does the firm do?
Sure. We are architectural and structural engineers, and we specialize in existing buildings and the assessment and repair and replacement design of building components. So the building envelope, roofs, walls, windows, waterproofing, and also the structural components. That's our bread and butter.
All right. So why is it so important to have an engineer involved in inspecting and maintaining the building envelope, which is like the roof, the walls, the windows?
So the building envelope is like your body. The outside of it protects you from the elements, right? So it's important to have somebody who's familiar with those elements and can do a proper assessment to make sure everything is functioning as intended. When those components start to break down, it leaves your building subject to water infiltration, moisture infiltration, which can start to degrade the components and lead to leaks and deterioration of materials.
Okay, and we could say, well, we kind of all know that. It's kind of like the ABCs of maintaining a building. But is there a particular type of facade or type of buildings that should be of particular attention for people living in it?
So I always want to start with top down, right? So start with your roof and make sure that your roof is watertight. Nobody ever goes up there to make sure that it's not letting water in. Then go to your walls and make sure that your masonry, your repointing is in good condition. Your sealant joints are in good condition. Where you have two different building materials that come together, making sure that there's watertight components there. Really just assessing everything and keeping up on that maintenance is what's important.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I'm a big advocate on is inspect those transition from material to material. How often should you do those inspections?
So roofing, I typically suggest that you have an annual inspection every year, whether it's an engineer or through your roofer. Sometimes you can get annual contracts with roofers to go up, inspect everything. So roofs every year. Building walls, depending on how big your building is, if you're in the city of Philadelphia and you're over 6 stories, you have a facade inspection requirement every 5 years. So that's typically what I recommend for building facades is every 5 years. Do a once over, make sure that everything is tight, make sure there's no cracks, there's no loose material, because that's why the facade ordinance was implemented, because buildings were deteriorating and materials falling to the ground and becoming a life safety hazard.
What should the owners of a building expect to gain out of an inspection report that you guys produce or an engineer produces?
So typically what they should expect is a breakdown of an assessment of each component. So we like to describe each component and what we see differently. So it's brick, it's windows, it's panels, the condition of whether it's good, fair, poor, and then the remaining useful life and recommended repairs. So, you might have 2 years left to do these repairs. And then we also do like to give an estimated or opinion of probable cost to do those repairs, because ultimately that's what the owners and the residents need to know is how much do I need to spend to fix all this?
Yeah, that's the scary part, but it's really important to get those inspections early so you have the time to get that done. And obviously, it impacts your insurability. So that's a whole different conversation. We're not going to talk about this on the show today, but yeah. Now, once you have your inspection report, what should the board of director do with it? Do they just sit on it for the next 6 years? What actions should be triggered by it?
They should take the actions that are recommended. So, we like to put out timelines. We like to separate repairs by priority. If budget allows, we always recommend doing more at once because economy of scale, you reset the clock on some of your
Very true.
repair and maintenance items. So really they should continue with their engineer that wrote the report to do the repair design. So putting together a scope of work for the repairs, whether it's just a written scope of work or full-blown drawings and specifications that identify some more of the details of the work. But that's the next step in the process, is getting that repair scope of work in the hands of contractors that can actually implement the work.
Now that you have that report, you have a roadmap to maintaining the building. Failing to follow that roadmap can even have some consequences for the board members should somebody get hurt. So we can see here that the service that engineers are providing nationwide is vital for community associations, especially high rises.
Definitely. You've got to have that professional engineer inspect and maintain, and someone who's also experienced in the building envelope. That is also very important.
Now, what will be your two takeaways for a board member or the manager of a community association watching this episode?
Be proactive. Stay on top of your building envelope maintenance. Maintenance can prolong the service life of those components, and where if you do your maintenance, you may not have those big giant repair programs that if you defer all of that maintenance, that so often comes about. So be proactive. Have your capital plans in place that you can project out and save for those bigger projects down the future. So proactive on your maintenance and save.
All right. Well, appreciate both suggestions. Now, we're going to wrap up in just a second. Before we give you an opportunity to plug for you and Klein and Hoffman, we'd like to ask you a little fun question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So typically, that's Steve's part of the job, but I have something for you. Can you share with us one thing that people do not know about you?
So growing up, I was a competitive gymnast and cheerleader, and I think that's where I get a lot of my work ethic from and enthusiasm. So, obviously I don't do that anymore. Right now, I've transitioned more into running events. So I run half marathons, I've run a couple full marathons, and I try to stay active that way.
Well, we'll have to talk about running because I have the goal to run a half marathon, but I hate running, so I need help. And not as a cheerleader, I'm going to give you the next 30 seconds to cheer for your company.
Sure. All right. So as we said, Klein and Hoffman is an architectural and structural engineering firm. We love assessing buildings, anything from older to newer, making sure that the building envelope is in good working condition. We do also do reserve studies for community associations that kind of just play in tandem in that capital planning, as we mentioned. If you have a facade inspection that's due, if you have a leak that's been ongoing that you can't figure out, or if you need a reserve study, we're here to help you guys out.
Terrific, Caitlin. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a fantastic rest of your Monday and to the ongoing week.
Thanks, David.
See you around.